Tonight on The Nightcap, dating is hard as it is, but what if you're a woman who can do it all by yourself? Let's get into it.
Yeah, what's up for a nightcap? Chill, kick back.
All right, let's talk to these powerful women, shall we? All right, first time on my couch for both of these ladies. We've got Candice Carswell here in the building. Welcome, welcome. And across from me, we've got Talitha Stewart, who I actually go to the gym with.
Yes. Workout buddies.
Yes. All right, you are powerful women in top roles, but what exactly do you do? Because we've had entrepreneurs on here, and y'all aren't entrepreneurs. Y'all in some businesses that people know.
Yeah, so I'm in oil and gas. I was with one of the big ones for about 14 years with Chevron, but for the last 3.5, I've been the document control manager for an LNG startup, and we are building a facility down in Brownsville, a brand new LNG plant. So it's my job to get the hundreds of thousands of documents that are being created and transmitted over these next 10 years coded and in the right system, and let everyone get trained on that system and be able to find everything within seconds, even though it's hundreds of thousands of documents.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I know you at home are like me right now, like, what? That sounds like you do some big shit.
Yeah, before I knew what it was, I had the same look. Like, I even tried to quit when I first started. I was like, I'm an admin. I don't know what this is. I think y'all called the wrong chick, but I'm going to quit. And the boss was like, I actually think you have a knack for this and you can make some serious money. So let me take you under my wing and show you something. And that was like 15 years ago. I'm so glad I listened and stayed, because it was well worth it.
There we go. Ty.
Yes. So I am currently on a sabbatical. I've been on a sabbatical for the last year, which means I just get to do what I want to do.
If you don't know what a sabbatical is, baby, you got to be able to afford taking a sabbatical, number one. But it's basically
that part.
Some time off to do what you want.
Time off to do what I want to do. I happened to write a book in the time that I took off.
Yes, which we're going to discuss
later.
Yes,
we'll talk about later. But prior to that, I spent probably the last 15 years in tech. And people get IT and tech confused. So from a tech perspective, I was in product development, where I did from ideation all the way through to something being in the sellable position within a store. Built devices and services. So I was at HP for about 2.5, 3 years. And then prior to that, I spent about 10 years at Microsoft. The most, famous product that I did was the Microsoft Surface, which is the tablet that could replace your laptop. So I am kind of one of the women behind the Surface. And so I started that business when it was $1 billion business, or $1 billion write-down, and built it to about a $5 or $6 billion business. So left at the end of last year HP as a senior vice president, and so that's what my story is.
Okay, we can talk all day about y'all's journeys, and I've done shows on that before, but what attracts me the most to women who are as powerful as y'all is pleasing you when you can get whatever you want by your damn self. Must be difficult. So how was it dating?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because you got to figure out what are you in it for. I was actually watching a podcast the other day, and they talked about, like, are you in it for companionship or partnership? And if you're in it for companionship, then it might not necessarily be the right thing, right? Because companionship, you can get that from a friend, a dog, a kid, a bunch of different sources. But true partnership is really about filling in the missing pieces for you, versus someone just being there to warm or take up space. And I think someone like myself, the spaces and the pieces are different. So I'm not necessarily looking for somebody that is going to pay all my bills and buy me nice bags, because those are physical things you can do for yourself at a certain level, but you want someone that truly understands you, can emotionally fill those spaces and fill you up. Understand your love languages, understand what makes you tick, understands when you have a bad day and you just might want to cuddle and like need a hug.
Yeah, so I dated for 4 years of like nothing but first, maybe a few second dates in there before I found my husband. And a lot of frogs, a whole lot of frogs. And
I'm sorry, you said a bunch of first dates. I couldn't.
A lot of first dates. Some wouldn't even show up. The dating game was absolute garbage. The Tinder, all the free
Bumbles,
apps, all of it,
Yeah.
all garbage. And when I would find somebody that I would supposedly date, they always intended to use me because it was obvious that I was looking for my husband. And so I presented myself that way and I would give of myself that way. And they were like, oh, well, I'm just going to take all that I can take until I'm ready to move on, or I think I found something better. And so that's why I had that 4-year from one relationship before my husband, because I wasn't just going to settle.
Right.
And so if I didn't think it was right after that first date, or if I didn't hear from them again after that first date, oh, well, okay, on to the next. But it was a long 4 years.
Okay. What we have to discuss is, because the reason, and I'm going to let people know, I recently bought a car and I met your husband, and he said that you came up with a checklist. Is that true?
It is. And I didn't do that on my own, honestly. People were telling me, you know, you need to know exactly what you want, exactly what you're looking for, and have that conversation with God. So it was a list between me and God. I had it in my phone. It had 19 things on it, and it said, this is all that I need to have in the person for me.
Oh, no, we're going to talk a little bit more about this list. Okay, you stay right there because we're going to hear about this list from this powerful woman coming up next. Welcome back to the Nightcap. I'm talking to powerful women who are navigating finding their partners, or have already found their partners, while being as independent as they are. And Candice, right before the break, you said that you created a list between you and God that was 19 points long.
Yeah.
And you don't think that's long?
No, because when I talk to other women, they tell me, oh, I have a list of 30, I have a list of 40. And I was like, oh, I think I was pretty reasonable.
But are those other women still single?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ty, have you made a list?
No, I don't have a list. I think for me, it is really about the connection that you have with someone. There are things that I want. I want someone to be who God intended them to be, right? And be living in that purpose first and foremost. And the rest of it kind of follows, because if you're doing that, then the rest of it should kind of fall into place as long as there's compatibility between the two people. But I've never been big on like, I need all of these things. There are some non-negotiables, like you probably need to have a job and like all the things, but it's never been like, all right, you have to be over 6 feet and this, and you know, I never get my type either. So that's
I don't
another
even
thing.
think physical was in there.
Really?
And he had 18 out of 19. He didn't have all 19. So I was flexible.
But he was batting like 99%.
Damn, hold on. He checked off 18 of your 19.
18
Can I
of
know
19.
the 19th that he didn't hit?
Someone without kids.
Someone without kids.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I felt like it was okay because his son, which is now my son, was a baby at the time. He was only 1. And so I was like, well, I'm all he'll ever know, you know, because my biggest fear was, you're not my mom and you can't tell me what to do. And I'm like, no, I get to nurture this baby and treat him as my own. And that's exactly what happened. So I'm glad I was open and not just like saw on his profile that he was a dad and kept moving.
So Ty, you don't have a list.
No.
You don't have, so what do you have requirements outside of walking in God's purpose?
It's more about how that person treats me. And as long as I feel like if their relationship is good with God and they're following those principles, then the rest of it should flow.
With all of the, because my husband and I have been together 6 years, and that is not just because we love each other. There's work that goes into that marriage. And with all of the classes and the marriage ministries we've joined, what you're saying is exactly right. So I think if more people know that going in, it'll save a lot of people a lot of heartache.
Because I think sometimes when you have the list, it's the minutia. You're negotiating with what you'll take versus saying this is what it's supposed to be. I always say, like, even when I talk about my career, I would have never known what was going to happen in the next job or in the next thing. But sometimes if we zoom out 50,000 feet, we see this beautiful tapestry that God created with us. And sometimes when you're looking at the components or the ingredients in a recipe, I'll say, you don't always know that this is actually going to taste good in the end because you can't see that 50,000 foot view. So I think for me, I've seen the 50,000 foot view, the beautiful tapestry that is my parents and their relationship and their marriage, and maybe it makes me a little bit harder to please or harder to accept, but I think a lot of it is my dad was a very godly man, or grew to be, and followed those principles, and my mom was that helpmate, helpmeet that was like, all right, what we doing? Okay, we riding, this is the plan, like this is what we're gonna achieve, and that's kind of what I want for myself, is what I saw with him.
Okay, I do want to talk about the standards you have, and then the biases that were placed against you, knowing that you could get it all by yourself, and the insecurities that some potential partners probably had when trying to approach you. All right, you stay right there. We'll be right back with more of the Nightcap. Welcome back to the Nightcap. We're talking to powerful women who have had to kiss so many frogs to find the one who can be their partners and their equals. We've got Candice, we've got Ty. Okay, what I've heard time and time again from women who are able to support themselves fully, can buy their own house, can buy their own shoes, their own cars, and all their things, is men are intimidated by that because then they don't know what to provide anymore, because they are taught young that they are the protectors and providers.
Right.
So how do you break that mold? How do you
I didn't know how to break that mold. Like I used to tell my friends, or even my mom, because my mom is actually my best friend, but I used to tell her, like, I think I would find a man or a husband quicker if I just quit my job and went work at Burger King, because they all just feel like, you know, I have everything already, and they either want to use me for it or say, well, she doesn't need me, so I'll move on to the next. And I shouldn't have to apologize for working hard and making a good living for myself.
Right.
And I never knew how much of an impact it was for my husband until we were married, and he started telling the story all over town. So when we first started dating, he was working at this car dealership, and there was a supercar on the floor, the exotic, you know, $200,000, $300,000 car, whatever. And he's like, you know, I could see me driving this, and maybe I'd let you drive it, you know, once we're married or whatever. And I was like, that's fine. I said, but I can get my own because I'm balling by myself. And I said it so innocently, and it really stuck with him, and he had to like go and deal with his feelings and see if he wanted to move forward. And thank God he did. He wasn't like the rest of the frogs, but I honestly was just saying, like, I could get my own, but thank you.
You can sit in the passenger seat of mine.
Yeah, okay. Like, we don't have to have one and share it. We can have two.
But I think that really goes back to the point of, like, men feeling like, or some men feeling like providing is a financial statement. And it's not necessarily that. You're providing emotional support, you're providing security and safety and like all the things. It extends well beyond finances. And I think, again, going back to my parents, my dad worked in a factory. He worked at Chrysler when my parents met. My mom was there for the summer. She was interning, but she was at the University of Michigan in nursing school. And so when they started, my mom probably made a lot more than my dad, but eventually they built together. And so that provision, that providership that men are supposed to do, that role isn't just about who has the bigger paycheck. It's about, how are you strategic about that? How can you help me be more strategic? How can you kind of help to do other things? How can you provide that security and safety and all the other things we're looking for?
But how long did it take you to realize that? I feel like a lot of women, especially women who make money, they want an equal partner who can provide the same or more.
Yeah, I think you easily get stuck in the mold of, I have this, so you should have this, or my mate needs to look like this. But I also look at, I wouldn't be here if my mama had that same mentality, right? If she had a judged on, this is who I am, so who I need to marry is this, from a income standpoint versus total potential. We don't always look at total potential. We sometimes just look at the right now. I think sometimes we focus on like this is what I want now versus saying like, who has the hustle, who has the grit, who can I help build with, or who is going to help me build as well. And that grit and hustle is sometimes underrated. when we're looking at somebody and saying like, oh, but they're not an executive, or they're not this.
Yeah.
Who cares?
I work with
cares?
all those guys. I don't want that.
And they're boring.
Yeah.
They are boring. Where you're like,
not
okay,
how
so
it
what are we gonna
works.
do? Oh, let's go to this restaurant and this wine, and then I'm like, okay, but that's nothing new. That's something I could do for
I can do
myself.
it by myself.
Yeah.
Okay, so final question, and this is, I guess, a yes or no. Women who have been independent for years by themselves, is there love and hope for them out there?
Absolutely.
She said, you see this eyes on his finger.
Look, one day. But yeah, I absolutely believe that. The one advice that I took from my 13-year-old daughter is you do also have to go outside to meet somebody. I can't
That
meet
too.
them in my living
That too.
room. When you don't even go to the grocery store and you Instacart everything. So
God.
I went outside and I happened to meet someone. So we'll see what happens with that.
That's
But
always
you can't be all stuffy in the house and by yourself
And
if you
try
want to
new
be with
things.
somebody.
And trying to,
Because like I
Yes.
said, the 4 years of the Tinder and all the Bumble and all that, it was when I said, okay, all that stuff is free, and so I'm getting what I'm paying for.
Yes.
I did the Match subscription, and within 24 hours, my husband and I were speaking, and I never logged back into Match again.
wow.
So try something different.
Try
That's
something
the
different.
advice.
Good point.
Well, we're going to try something different today because Ty actually, during her sabbatical, decided she was going to write a cookbook. And so we're going to try something behind the bar. So you stay right there. We'll be right back with Midnight Munchies. Welcome back to the Nightcap. We're behind the bar now because, as I said, Ty's on sabbatical and she decided to write a cookbook. So you know what time it is? It's time for Midnight Munchies. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, first, before we dive into
Yes.
whatever you're making, let's talk about this cookbook.
Yes. So the cookbook is probably, I want to say 15 years in the making, but people who have known me longer will say it's probably 20 years in the making. So I was actually talking to a friend of mine and she was like, yeah, you used to cook like in your dorm room. You would make like steaks and potatoes and like all the things in the dorm. And everybody came to your room to eat. And so we've been waiting on this book with all those recipes. So I like to call it a recipe anthology because it's a collection of stories about how the recipe came to be, as well as the recipe itself. So it's a super cool book, and I do everything well seasoned. So this culture is season 2.
And I mean, it's an ode, I think, to your family as
Yes.
well. She's got photos of her family members, and as she said, like, there's stories to go with all the recipes. All right, so for today,
Yeah, so today we are making a pearlized chicken couscous salad from the book. And it's actually a recipe that came from inspired by a salad that I used to always get at the flagship Nordstrom when I lived in Seattle. And during COVID, everything was closed. It was not like Houston. We were shut down.
in Houston, we were outside.
Yes, it was very much shut down. And so I had to taste my way through this recipe. My daughter this morning was like, hey, what are you making? And I told her, she was like, but you're going to leave that there for them, right?
She had too much.
She's like,
Too
I'm not
much
eating
stuff.
that again. So, but the first thing we do, because I have 2 new besties, I have seasoned culture aprons for you guys.
Yes, thank you.
We'll start there. And this is a super simple recipe. It is really just assembling things today. But this recipe is easy. You can use rotisserie chicken from the store if you want to. You can add or substitute any veggies. The key ingredient is the dressing, the chicken, and the couscous. Everything else is whatever you like.
Okay,
You know,
but
like-
this is the flagship Nordstrom remake by
Yes,
Ty.
the remake.
Okay.
This is the remix.
I love it.
Okay.
The remix.
So we're gonna start with our couscous, and this is just a dump it in salad. So we're gonna put our couscous in. Then next we're just gonna pop our chicken in, and I just grilled this with some oregano and pepper, salt, and a little bit of garlic. There's 2 types of couscous, Israeli or pearled couscous, which is bigger grain, and then the other that's more like you kind of mush it together. It's kind of like if you take cornbread and crumble it up, that's kind of what it looks like.
Okay.
Then we have about 3 ounces of arugula. Then we're gonna take about half of a white onion, or a purple onion. red onion, whatever you like to call it. That's a whole one, so we're just gonna use half of this. But if you love purple onion, go ahead,
Throw
knock
it in.
yourself out. And then 1 can of mandarin oranges, a little bit of sweet to it. So we just put that over in there. And then last is about 3 ounces of dried cherries. You can chop these up a little bit more if you want to. I like to keep them whole because it's always a nice little surprise. Then I make the dressing.
Oh, you make the
you
dressing.
make it.
Okay, so
Yes.
can we? Is this a new side gig? And
I don't know, maybe. Hold on, let's figure this one
hold
out. Like the season culture expanded. But this is simple. It's literally just equal parts orange juice, a couple tablespoons of lemon juice, and olive oil. And then it's just some seasoning, a little bit of black pepper, a little bit of garlic, super simple. So we're gonna put all this right in here. The book really has recipes from every place that I've traveled, and I've been to every continent except for Antarctica. So there's a story about my time there and a little bit of a good little bite. You get to taste your way through it. And you said you were a
Always ready
foodie,
to
so this
eat,
should be
yes.
perfect.
Always ready to eat.
Yes. there we
Alrighty, so what do you ladies think?
So my husband will be happy that I eat couscous now.
go. Yep. Oh yes, baby. Oh yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
this is delicious.
Y'all need to get seasoned culture. And ladies, you may be kissing a lot of frogs, but there is a king out there for you?
Yes,
A
absolutely.
king out there for you.
Yes.
All right, cheers to you. We'll see you guys next time. This is damn good.
I'm glad you like it.